I stood in their sunlit lies, Santorini's glow mocking my absence, their smiles captured without me, carved a hollow where love should have been. Mom's letter, Dad's cold dismissal, Jake's betrayal. They silenced me, erased me. I carried their world, yet they left me behind. In my cracked apartment, I broke, not with tears, but with clarity. This is my fight, born from silence, to reclaim the voice they never heard. You don't notice it at first. You grow up in a house where the quiet moments linger longer than the noisy ones, where love isn't said, only implied, where dinner is served at 6 sharp and feelings are cleared off the table with the dishes. I was the eldest, the responsible one, the one who always knew where the first aid kit was, how to reset the router. When the mortgage was due, they didn't ask me to carry the family, they just never told me I could put it down. Dad ran the house like a silent clock. You could hear his mood in the way his shoes hit the floor. If it was fast and heavy, you knew to disappear. If it was slow, measured, he was in control. And we could breathe. Mom. She floated through life like steam off a kettle, always warm, always ready to vanish the moment things got too loud. She didn't interrupt. She didn't protect. She just existed between the tension. Then there was Jake, the golden child, 2 years younger, smarter in school, louder in laughter, quicker to cry and always forgiven faster than I could blink. He was the boy who could do no wrong. If I said no to something, I was difficult. If he said no, it meant he had boundaries. I was the shadow that held the house together. I made the schedules, remembered birthdays, paid half the utility bills when Dad forgot, cleaned the messes no one admitted making. I never asked why. I never asked for thanks. But I used to wonder, if I disappeared, how long would it take before anyone noticed back then? I still believed the answer would be immediate. I thought sacrifice meant something, that love would come quietly, like the way I gave it. But love doesn't always come back the way you send it out. Sometimes, it doesn't come back at all. Sometimes, it gets lost in people who were never taught how to hold it. It's funny, really, when I look back at photos from when we were younger, vacations, birthdays, graduations. I'm always just a little out of frame, not missing entirely, just not centered, not lit quite right, like someone they forgot to focus on. I used to think that was just coincidence. Dad never yelled at me. He didn't have to. All it took was a shift in his jaw, a narrowing of his eyes, that look, you know, the one, the kind that says, don't embarrass me. Or worse, you're ruining it. He didn't hit. He didn't need to. Control doesn't always look like bruises. Sometimes, it's the way your voice dries up in your throat when he enters the room. Mom. She was a master of avoidance. She made silence into a language. When Dad was sharp, she became softer. When he was angry, she became small. When he dismissed me, she pretended not to see. Sometimes, she'd press her hand to my back as if to say, I know, but she never said it out loud. She never stood between us. Her loyalty was passive, but loyalty, passive or not, still sides with power. Jake never had to learn any of that. To him, home was safety, laughter, video games echoing through the walls. He'd leave dishes in the sink, spill soda on the couch, raise his voice at dinner, and the world kept spinning. When I spoke up, Dad would frown. Don't ruin the mood. Alyssa. When Jake did it, he's just being a boy. That phrase, you're too serious, followed me like a curse. They said it when I asked for space. They said it when I cried too easily. They said it when I went quiet, which was often. I became an expert in adjusting myself, shrinking myself. Reading the air like a storm was always about to break. And still, I hoped foolishly, maybe that someday they would see me. Not the version they created, not the inconvenience, but me. I remember the day Mom brought it up at dinner. Santorini, a week by the sea. White rooftops, turquoise domes, The kind of place that looks like it was built just to make people feel alive again. Jake was scrolling on his phone, only half listening. Dad nodded slowly, like it was already a done deal. Mom smiled at me, not quite warm, but enough to make me think maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. I should have known better, but I didn't. Something in me, something old, dusty, childlike lit up. I started looking at flights that night. I knew they wouldn't ask, but I could help. I always helped. It wasn't about the money, it was about being part of something. So I offered, quietly, I can cover some of the hotel. I said. Jake didn't look up. Dad gave a non-committal grunt, but Mom touched my wrist. Not affection, not gratitude, more like she was surprised I was trying. I took it as hope. In the weeks that followed, I planned like it mattered. I saved screenshots of the beaches, learned a few Greek phrases, printed out directions from the airport. I imagined us laughing over seafood, standing side by side in the sunset. I even pictured Jake handing me his camera and saying, "Can you take one of us?" And maybe he'd mean us, as in all of us. That's the thing about people like me. When you've lived in the cracks long enough, even crumbs look like a feast. For the first time in years, I counted down days to something that felt like it belonged to all of us. I didn't realize it yet, but I was the only one who thought that. The message came 3 days before the flight. I was on my lunch break desk, cluttered. Coffee cold when my phone buzzed. It was short. Too short. "Hey, sweetheart. Something's come up. We're gonna have to postpone the trip. Dad's worried about money right now. We'll reschedule soon. Love you." Mom, no call. No group message. Just that. I stared at the screen, rereading the words until they blurred into one long, heavy silence. My stomach didn't drop, not right away. It kind of floated, like it didn't want to admit what my brain already knew. I texted back something like, "Okay, hope everything's all right." She never replied. I sat there for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. Just numb, like someone had quietly erased something I'd drawn in pencil. And I hadn't realized I'd pressed so hard. That night, I canceled the hotel reservation I'd made under my name. No one mentioned the money I'd sent. I tried not to make a big deal out of it. I told myself, maybe it's really about finances. Maybe Dad's job hit a rough patch. Maybe this is just life. But deep down, that stubborn part of me that always knew when something was off whispered, "It's not about money." Still, I silenced that voice. I always did. Because the alternative, believing my family might be lying to me, was worse. I went through the motions the next few days like nothing happened. Work, groceries, laundry. I even cleaned my apartment more than usual. Like if I kept things spotless. I could scrub away the disappointment clinging to the air, but a voice inside me, soft, scared, honest, kept asking the same thing on loop. Why didn't they call? It happened by accident, like all the worst things do. It was Saturday night. I was curled up on the couch, doing what most lonely people do when they don't want to admit they're lonely, scrolling through social media like it might offer comfort. And then I saw it. A photo, bright sun, white buildings, that iconic blue dome of Santorini, my mother, my father, Jake, smiling. Mom wore a wide-brimmed straw hat I'd helped her pick out online. Dad held up a glass of wine. Jake was mid-laugh, shirt half open, sunburn just starting to show. Their captions said things like, "Finally, some family time and well-deserved break." I stared at the photo, then the next, and the next. A group selfie on a boat, dinner by the cliffs, my dad and Jake clinking glasses, Mom with a backdrop of white stairs and blue sky looking more alive than I'd seen her in years. I didn't move, didn't blink, just watched as if I could rewind it, as if the truth wasn't smacking me full in the chest with every swipe. They actually went, without me, and they weren't hiding it. The trip wasn't canceled, it wasn't postponed, it just didn't include me. I should have screamed, should have called, should have stormed the comments section with every ugly truth I had bottled up for years. But I didn't. I just sat there. the room dark except for the blue glow of my screen, and felt something I still can't name. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even betrayal. It was absence. Like I had died, and they'd all simply moved on without bothering to attend the funeral. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept staring at their faces so full of ease, so sun-soaked and casual, like I was never part of their story. Not even a footnote. Not even a name left out by mistake. When the sun came up, I was still awake, still scrolling, still screenshotting every image, every comment, every smile that confirmed what I already knew but couldn't believe. It wasn't an oversight. It was a decision. They made it, together, and no one thought twice about me. The worst part, no guilt, not even the performance of guilt. They were laughing, joking, eating grilled octopus under string lights while I sat in my tiny apartment wondering if I'd somehow imagined the whole damn trip. But I hadn't. I had receipts, the hotel confirmation, the bank transaction, the email I'd sent Mom offering to cover the cost, her thank you. Sweetheart, that helps a lot. And still they went, and still they smiled. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything or scream into a pillow. That's not how I break. Instead, I got organized. I created a folder on my desktop, The Truth. I labeled screenshots by date and time. I printed out the hotel receipt. I typed up a timeline, just facts. No emotion like I was preparing a case file. And maybe I was, because when they came home, I wasn't going to ask questions. I was going to make statements. But even as I planned, something inside me wilted. Not because of the betrayal, but because of the predictability of it, somewhere deep in my gut. I'd known, from the second I got that text. Maybe even before. But I still said yes, still hoped, still let them break my heart like it was some sort of family tradition. And this time I was done pretending it didn't hurt. They came back on a Tuesday. The sun was out. The wind was soft. It was the kind of day you'd expect to be peaceful bird song. Groceries in hand. Doors unlocking like nothing's ever broken. Except I was waiting. I didn't tell them I'd be there. I still had my key. I'd never given it back, mostly because no one ever asked. I sat at the kitchen table. Their kitchen. The one I used to clean. Reorganize. Restock. The fridge still had the magnetic calendar I filled out 3 months ago. Appointments. Bills. Reminders, all in my handwriting. I almost laughed. The door opened. I didn't flinch. Jake walked in first, dragging a suitcase behind him. Earbuds still in. He froze when he saw me. One headphone slipping loose. Then Mom. Her smile died instantly. And finally, Dad. He didn't look surprised, just mildly inconvenienced. No one said anything. I reached into my tote bag and laid the papers on the table neat. Methodical. Screenshots, bank statements, the printed email. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. Mom's eyes dropped to the table. Jake glanced at Dad. Confused. Why I asked, not screamed, not sobbed, just one word, but it held years, entire lifetimes of silence, of being pushed aside, of pretending it was okay to be forgotten. Dad stepped forward, arms crossed. We needed a break, he said flatly. You tend to complicate things. The mood, the energy, the words hit harder than I thought they would. Complicate. Energy. As if I were a weather pattern they couldn't control. So they left me off the forecast. I looked at Mom. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her face crumbled like she wanted to apologize but was still asking permission from someone else to do it. Jake finally spoke. This is really dramatic. Alyssa. I stared at him, the boy I used to defend when he got bullied in middle school. The one I stayed up with during his panic attacks. The one who borrowed my charger every single day for 3 years and never returned it. And all he could say was dramatic. I stood, took one last look at the 3 people I used to call home, and walked out. No goodbyes, no screaming, just the weight of a door closing behind me and a life I was no longer willing to shrink myself into. I didn't go back for my things that day. I didn't even look over my shoulder as I walked down the front steps, the same ones I used to scrub on Saturdays. Barefoot, sun in my eyes. Hoping someone would notice how clean they looked, I just kept walking. Down the block. Past the old sycamore tree I once climbed as a kid. Past Mrs. Elkin's house still cluttered with wind chimes. Everything looked the same. And yet, nothing was. The key in my pocket felt like a joke. A relic. I would never use it again. And I knew that before I even reached the end of the street, the silence in that house wasn't just absence, it was policy. A practiced, generational quiet that kept wounds from airing, pain from confronting, and people like me from ever speaking too loudly. I was done with it. I spent that night in a friend's spare room half drunk on cheap wine and disbelief. She didn't ask many questions, just handed me a blanket and said, "Whenever you're ready." But I didn't sleep. Again. Instead, I lay there in the dark, hearing the phantom echoes of my mother's footsteps, my father's chair creaking as he shifted his disapproval. Jake's laughter coming from the hallway always just a little too loud, a little too sure of his place in the world. I tried to cry, but nothing came. I think a part of me had already mourned them years ago. This wasn't grief, it was clarity. They had chosen the version of me they could manage. And when I became inconvenient when I asked for space, truth, presence, they chose each other instead. So I chose me. The next morning, I rented a small apartment with a window that faced east. The light came in harsh and honest. I liked that. It didn't pretend to be gentle. Neither would I. Anymore. It came on a Thursday morning, just after 900, and I was washing a mug. My one good one, the one with the cracked handle and chipped lip. But I liked it because it was honest about its damage. My phone rang. Jake's name. I hadn't heard from him since I walked out of the house. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. On the 4th, something told me to answer. His voice was quiet, tighter than usual, flat. Almost. "Mom's dead." He said 3 words. No softness, no build-up, just a scalpel. I said nothing. He filled the silence with facts. She'd collapsed in the kitchen. Dad found her. Paramedics came. Too late. Stroke. Sudden. I heard him. But it felt like he was underwater. Or maybe I was. Every sound got muffled. Every detail turned vague and unreal. After he hung up, I stood at the sink with soap still on my hands. The mug slid from my fingers and shattered in the basin. I didn't flinch, didn't move, just stared at the pieces like they were meant to say something I couldn't. She was gone, and I had left without hugging her, without asking her why she didn't speak up, without saying goodbye. I wanted to feel rage, or guilt, or something, but all I felt was this hollow ache, not sharp, not hot, just endless. Like someone had scooped out part of me and forgot to fill it back in. I didn't call Dad. I didn't ask about funeral plans. I didn't go home because I didn't know where home was anymore. Because if I stepped back into that house, I was afraid I'd become the kind of silence she died in. So I stayed in my apartment. I turned off my phone, and I waited for grief to find its voice. It didn't. Not yet. All I heard was the drip of the faucet, and somewhere deep in my ribs the sound of something sinking. The letter came a few days after. It was Jake who brought it. He didn't come in, just stood in the doorway, eyes bloodshot, face blank. He held out a small envelope off-white, edges creased like it had been held too tight for too long. She kept it in her wallet. He said, "It had your name on it." I didn't say thank you. I just took it, closed the door, and stood there with it in my hands like it might burn through my skin. It wasn't sealed. The flap was tucked in, like she hadn't wanted it to be too hard to open, like she knew I'd be shaking. I unfolded the paper, her handwriting uneven, rushed, more like someone trying to outrun what they had to say than someone calmly writing it down. Alyssa, if you're reading this, it means I never got brave enough to say it out loud. I'm sorry. Not just for the trip, for everything, for the way I let him turn the air in that house against you. Your father didn't want you to come. He said you changed the mood. I should have fought. I didn't. I told myself it was just a vacation, but it wasn't. It was another moment you deserved, and I helped take it from you. I wasn't strong. I let silence protect me instead of protecting you. I let you carry blame that was never yours to begin with. You've always been the strongest of us. And we made you feel like the problem. I'm so sorry, Alyssa, for all the ways I didn't show up. Please don't let my silence be your inheritance. Mom, I read it once, then again, and again. Not for understanding, I understood too well, but because it was the only voice I had left of her. Not the soft one she used around Dad, not the empty one she used with me. This was her voice when no one was watching, and it shattered me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the letter, to burn it, to run into the night barefoot and barefooted by rage, but I didn't. I just sat on the floor, clutching a piece of paper that weighed more than any grief I'd ever carried, and whispered to no one. Why now? The letter didn't give me peace. It gave me questions. It gave me a grief that wasn't just about death, it was about years, decades even, of things left unsaid, of pain passed down like heirlooms. So I did what I always do when I don't know what to feel. I looked for proof. I started with Mom's old email account. I still had the password she'd once asked me to reset it for her. Years ago. It hadn't changed. She never changed anything. She held on, even to the broken things. The inbox was full grocery coupons, chain emails, appointment reminders, but buried in a folder labeled family were messages I wasn't meant to see. Emails between her and Dad. Not love letters, not memories, instructions, accusations, orders. I told you not to tell her. Why do you always make things harder? She stirs things up. She's not like us. Stop giving her false hope. If you say anything about the trip, I swear to God, don't come crying when it all falls apart. Each one hit like a blow. Not because I hadn't expected it, but because now I couldn't pretend anymore. He hadn't just wanted me out of the trip. He wanted me out of the narrative. To him, I was noise, disruption, something to be edited out of the family picture. And Mom? She'd let it happen. Sometimes she'd try to fight back. I could see it in her replies. Soft and vague. She's just sensitive. She doesn't mean to be difficult. Maybe we can talk about this more later. But he always had the last word. I sat there, reading her half-resistance and his full control. And I realized she'd been living in fear long before she died. Not fear of violence, fear of conflict, of being unloved, of being discarded, just like me. And I hated how familiar that sounded. I closed the laptop, suddenly aware of how cold my apartment was. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't spoken to anyone in days. I thought I was alone because I walked away. But the truth, I was alone long before I ever left. I waited 2 days before I called Jake. I rehearsed what I would say. I even wrote it down. But when he picked up, every word I'd planned vanished into static. He sounded tired. Or annoyed. I couldn't tell anymore. Hey, I said. Pause. What's up? He replied. Too casual. I took a breath. I read Mom's emails. Between her and Dad, silence, then a sigh. You shouldn't be digging through her stuff. Alyssa. I blinked. I wasn't digging. I was trying to understand. There are things she didn't tell us. Things Jake cut me off. I don't want to hear it. My hands clenched. He lied to us. Jake. He manipulated her. He pushed her to what he snapped. To die. Is that what you're going to say? His voice cracked not with grief, but with fury and fear. I knew that tone. I'd worn it myself. I'm not blaming him for her death. I said quietly, I'm blaming the silence. The way no one ever said what needed to be said. The way she apologized to me after she was gone. He was quiet. Then he laughed, short, bitter. You always make everything about you? The words stung harder than I thought they would. Not because they were new, but because they were so old, so familiar. Like something Dad would have said. Like something Jake had learned to say. Instead of listening, I swallowed. She was scared. Jake, don't you see that I see a sister who's trying to rewrite history because she doesn't like how it feels to be left out? It wasn't just a rejection. It was a sentence, a closing. I felt something in me fold in half, quietly. The kind of break you don't scream about. The kind you carry for the rest of your life. I thought you'd want to know. I said, and then I hung up. No goodbye, no curse, no plea for him to believe me. I just let the line go dead like she did. Like we all eventually do. Jake showed up unannounced. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind that blurred windows and made everything feel just a little more fragile. I opened the door to find him standing there, soaked through, holding an envelope like it had weight. He didn't ask to come in. He just handed it to me. He wanted you to have this, he said, then turned and walked away. No eye contact, no explanations. Just like always, I closed the door, sat on the floor, and stared at the envelope. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable sharp, measured, precise. My father's. I don't know why I was surprised. Maybe part of me thought he'd just ignore me, let me fade quietly. But no, he needed the last word. Inside was a single sheet of paper, neatly folded. No smudges, no tears, no apology. Alyssa, this has gone far enough. I don't know what you're hoping to accomplish with these accusations, but it needs to stop. Your mother is gone. Let her be gone. You've always had a hard time fitting in, not just with us, but in general. Your energy has never aligned with the rest of us. That's not a fault. It's just the truth. We didn't exclude you to be cruel. We excluded you because peace matters. You are not compatible with this family. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. But please, do not return. Dad. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I folded the letter back up, slower than I meant to. Every word echoed like a door slamming in a hallway that had already been empty for years. I had always known he didn't love me the way he loved Jake, but now he'd put it in writing. Not anger, not hatred, just exclusion, formalized, final. It wasn't rejection. It was deletion. It was the building manager who found me. 3 days without movement behind my door. 2 weeks of unopened mail. A neighbor heard my alarm clock going off. Again and again. They knocked. Called my name. No answer. So they came in. I was on the floor, next to the bed, curled in. Like sleep had folded me into myself and forgotten to let me go. Beside me was my notebook, the one I only wrote in when I didn't want to say things out loud. The pen was uncapped. The last page held only one line. If I disappear, will they call it peace? They called an ambulance. Hooked me up to machines that beeped like they were trying to bring rhythm back into a life that had stopped keeping time. No one rushed to the hospital. No next of kin waiting outside. Just nurses, charts, the soft hum of fluorescent lights. When I woke up, I didn't cry. I didn't ask who found me. I didn't even ask what day it was. I just stared at the ceiling and thought, so this is what it takes to be noticed. A part of me felt ashamed, not for what I'd done or almost done, but because I didn't feel anything. Not relief, not regret, just numb. Like I had gone so far beyond pain that even the echo of it had died out. I wasn't trying to die. I was trying to leave. Just leave. The noise, the letters, the versions of me everyone kept rewriting without permission. But my body wouldn't let me. It clung. It gasped. It dragged me back to a world that still didn't know how to look me in the eye without blinking. They didn't call it a suicide. They didn't call it anything. Just an episode. A breakdown. A moment of weakness. People love tidy language. It makes grief easier to file away. Jake didn't visit. Dad sent one email through a lawyer. We hope she recovers and moves forward. We wish her peace. Peace. That word again, so often used when no one wants to say pain. There was no family meeting. No flowers sent to my door. No quiet knock. No trembling voice asking, "Are you okay?" It was like they thought surviving meant healing. As if coming back meant I wanted to. The truth is, I never fully came back. I moved through days like a background actor in someone else's film. People talked to me. but I didn't feel spoken to. I laughed sometimes. Out of habit, I showed up to work, paid bills, watered the plant by my window that somehow refused to die. But I was gone, long before the pills, long before the fall, gone in all the ways that matter. Sometimes, I'd reread Mom's letter, not because it comforted me, it didn't, but because it was proof that once, someone almost stood up for me. Almost, not enough. And when I closed my eyes at night, I didn't pray, I didn't dream, I just floated between breaths, between versions of myself, between the girl who tried to earn love and the woman who finally stopped asking. I never told anyone about the final journal entry. No one ever asked. But if they had, if someone had looked me in the eye and said, "What were you trying to say?" I would have told them this. I didn't want to be remembered. I just wanted not to be forgotten.